Further defined that for every $1 million spent, $1.5 million in GDP through wages and profits are generated. Seeing the yellow light, I'm just going to move on. Some of the project benefits are there is a 50 meters away. There's a bus stop, and that's seen on the left. It's a functional bus stop, but it's a little tired. And so one of our proposals is to work with BC Transit. We've contacted them on their bus shelter upgrade program, and we want to install a sheltered bus stop to increase the viability of transit. Number 39 goes by there, and it's 10 minutes away from the Royal Oak Exchange, where the Greater Victoria region is reached from that exchange very easily. In terms of our community consultation, we met with the Cordova Bay Community Association in 2012 in September. We mailed letters out in the same months. We got a letter of support from the immediate neighbors of Lavinia Lane, and it was a conditional letter, and we made changes to our number of lots. We originally had a 10-lot proposal. We reduced that by 2 lots. We changed the zoning. We changed the height to reduce it, and we increased the covenant area. From there, we held community open houses and 3 rounds of door knocking, and the results were 26 properties in support of 8 lots as proposed. 2 properties preferred 7 lots, and they are east of our project. 0 residents opposed, and the community association was in favor of 7 lots because they have a standing policy internally where if a project requires variances, they don't support. But at a previous council meeting, I showed a map showing this whole area that very few of these properties, as noted in the staff report as well, are conforming, and ours are quite wider than some of the neighboring properties. These are some pictures internally of the site, just showing that the site is of a disturbed nature. It's not a pristine forest. We're not asking for an exclusion from the EPA, just for your comfort. But it's too soon. Yeah, sorry, too soon. Apologies. There is some structure on the site that can be constructed, including a house. There's a shot of it. The water's just behind. This the house as well. So if I can go over the environmental considerations, we designed it to mitigate tree loss. We're committing to a 1-to-1 tree replacement for 7 lots, 2-to-1 for the 8th lot. 12 boulevard trees, marine, backshore protection, steep slope protection. 22% of the site will be covenanted as protected area. Picture on the right shows a small pocket park that we'd like to construct as a viewpoint towards Cordova Bay. And then $100,000 is the estimated cash in lieu of parkland dedication at subdivision. Build green gold, solar ready, house deconstruction, and permeable pavers throughout the project. This is the tree health map. On the left-hand side, you see a picture showing trees in yellow are fair to poor health, which represents 97% of the trees on site. 5 healthy trees in total, 3% of them. On the right-hand side is a tree removal map showing which trees will be removed. Red indicates likely removal, 56 trees. Yellow indicates potential tree removal. We'll do everything we can to retain these trees, but there is risk that they will be taken out. 109 trees will be retained, and then 90 trees will be replaced. And the important part about that 90 trees replaced is we're taking out fair to poor trees and replacing them hopefully with healthy trees that are more designed, that are more tolerant to development, that will fare better. There is a 15-meter setback, a 30-meter setback, and then a geotechnical engineer has defined a setback as well. And I just want to point out that the house closest to the water is nowhere near these setbacks. There's an ample distance given. And that there is a creek that runs down the property, but our biologist has defined that it's not fish bearing, so the riparian area regulations don't apply to it. We'll also be undertaking extensive environmental remediation of the invasive species in the foreshore area, and this will be supervised by our biologist. And now if I can turn it over with your patience to Brad, who will be talking about Bearland Strata regulations.
All right. So, Mr. Chair, through to you, Vic, please understand that the comments that I'm about to make I've had with Mr. Matanovich, and they're in no way intended to denigrate staff. At times professionals agree to disagree, and that's the situation that occurs here. It's not my intention to throw staff underneath the bus, but on the lot averaging matter and how it applies in Bearland Strata Plan and the OCP, I believe that staff currently have it wrong. This proposal complies with the lot averaging tenants and guidelines of the OCP, the average size of the 8 lots is roughly 1,000 square meters. The site is, if I can do this with Luke's, the site is roughly 12,200 square meters. We have 4,100 square meters of access, leaves us 8,000 square meters divided by 8 lots. Is 1,000 square meters per lot. Saanich does not have a definition of lot averaging in its bylaws, and I wouldn't have thought that it needs one. The lot averaging is a very well-defined and understood tool in the planning community. It's been around for a very long time. It's been around since 1975, when the Planning Institute of BC and municipal planners got together to craft the Bearland Strata regulation. The concept of lot averaging is not to increase density, but to allow for a more efficient and creative land use that allows you to achieve the desired density, and allow for some flexibility so that developers, municipal planners, and approving officers could lay out land development in a way that respected some of the higher principles of best use of land, not simply area and width, but allowed us to respect things like terrain for steep slopes, soil conditions for septic fields, and preserve amenities such as trees, parks, and in some cases even things like heritage buildings. That's because much of the land here in BC was not laid down by geology or the glaciers in a way that was nice and rectilinear and gridiron. In their report, staff correctly have noted that Bearland strata plans, such as the 3 parcels next door, employ lot averaging, but for their reasons, they are interpreting the OCP differently and are only including the limited common property that is associated with the lot, and that comes up with a different average. So if I can direct you to the regulation, it says where a zoning bylaw sets out, now this is the very first thing in the Bearland strata regulations, it's not buried down, this is number 1 with the bullet. Bearland strata plan can be approved where a zoning bylaw sets out minimum parcel sizes. The approving officer may approve a Bearland strata plan considering strata lots of less than the permitted size, so long as the total area of the Bearland strata plan, exclusive of those portions intended to provide access, divided by the number of lots intended to be created, is not less than, and I'm paraphrasing, the minimum lot size. And so we have met that average test. And I think it's important that we can't have 2 different definitions of lot averaging. We can't have one in the hall that's just going to lead to mayhem. We can't have one that is well understood, publicly accessible, and used by the majority of the planning community, and then a different one that applies that staff have internally. And we've had this conversation with staff. I'm not saying anything that Jared and I have not already discussed. Now, this is not the first or the only time that the Bearland strata regulation has been used in Saanich. We're not reinventing the wheel here. This development, Copper Ridge and Copperfield, is on Kennett. It's just behind the Pacific Christian School. This parcel has 50 Bearland strata lots on it. If you simply divided the strata lots by their area, it's about 494 square meters. If you add in the common property areas, which are highlighted in blue, this is the actual strata plan. If you add in those common property areas, which aren't limited to an individual lot, they're added as amenities for the entire parcel, then you have an average lot size of 563 square meters, which complies with the RS6 zone. Another example of this, these are the mathematics for it, but in the interest of being brief, it's in your stuff, I'll continue on. Another example similar, this is Maddox Wood, which is not too far from this development. In this area, the LAP was for RS12 lots, 930 square meters. If we simply took the lot average, these lots come out at 903 square meters. We add in only the common property, which is preserved area, trees, we end up with 965 square meters, which again complies with the local area plan. Now, this has a special zone being RS Maddox Wood. That's a little different than others, but the LAP was a 930 square meter average lot size. So this really is about density. It's not about lot sizes, and Luke has already touched on that. And I'm not going to take your time up with the other points I've got here because I think Luke has covered those off. But there is one comment I just want to make briefly about appropriate density. And if you allow me, several decades ago we used to drive around in large cars with large engines, and we got 6 to 8 miles to the gallon. And we didn't really think about that kind of waste because gas was cheap and we thought that we had lots of it. Now we strive for efficiencies in our cars, Volkswagen perhaps notwithstanding, but we strive for efficiencies in our cars. We want efficient house designs that don't use up, a lot of energy. We're trying to reduce our carbon footprint. But somehow I think we don't always get to that concept of efficiency in land use. And I think that that is dangerous. I think it sort of borders on ethical because I think we're pushing a problem down the road to our children. And that especially applies on infill subdivisions, because in an infill subdivision, you're not creating any new infrastructure. You're piggybacking on what's there. I'm not saying that every lot has to be a postage stamp. We have local area plans and OCPs that have densities that the public have expressed a desire for in certain areas, and we respect that process, but we also can't waste land by not achieving the desired density in those LAPs. We can't drill for more land. There's no Moore's law for land development or a technological fix to create more. The world's not making land in a time frame that, for the next 100 generations we'll get to use. So every lost lot is a lost opportunity. It's a squandered resource. It's a loss for the municipality, and that the tax benefit of that lot is lost, which means that going forward, every other taxpayer has to pay that little bit more because we only got 700 out of 800 lots, and that burden isn't carried. And infill lots don't generally create a lot of burden. Saving trees is a very honorable thing, and we should make every reasonable effort to preserve the urban forest. That's viable and that's good. But if you don't achieve lots in an infill situation because you're preserving a tree, those lots are going to go somewhere else. I mean, we're having children, and we know our children, we hope they're going to have grandchildren, and we hope that they're going to move out of their houses eventually. So if we don't do our development infill in an appropriate way, those lots go down the road, and to get to those lots we have to build more road, and we pave the roads, we put in infrastructure, sewers, drains, waters, take out the trees on the way there, and then we end up with a building envelope somewhere else that takes out trees. So if we're not being careful to achieve density where it's appropriate, I'm not asking for any more than that, then we end up with a net loss. So I just want to make the point that I don't think that we can afford not to get the best use out of land. So I would urge you going forward with this bylaw that you consider that. I think that given the nature, the physical structure of the constraints, this is the best that can be done with this lot. And as we've said, the only variance we're asking for is the one minor variance on lot width. Thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you. Is there any more to your presentation? Is that going to be your presentation? That's it? Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Any member of the public who'd like to address council on this item?
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, councillors, staff. Ken Whitcroft, 1044 Inverness Road. I have to kind of disagree with the density part. Density needs to go in our major centers where basically it is complete community, where we do not drive cars. Because basically what this is, again, is car-oriented development, and it is one, greenhouse gases until we get electric cars, but at the same time, we're also putting more congestion on our roads, which means that people sit in cars longer on the road. It's not viable to continue to fill the urban containment boundary until there's no more room within the urban containment boundary. We need to start looking at major centers, and I believe this is coming forward, is to put the people where it should be, not out in the middle of absolutely nowhere. Thank you.
Anyone else who'd like to address council on this item? Seeing none. Councillor Brown has a question for the proponent. If you'd like to come up to the microphone. And I have a couple of questions over here afterwards.
Hi. So I'm looking at the property line to your neighbor, and I'm looking at how the dedicated road dead ends with 3 parked cars, but then there's another line that says dedicated for road. So if your neighbor sells the property and gets developed, at some future stage. Will those 3 spaces for cars be lost for a road?
Through the chair, you're referring to the neighbor to the west, that large
Yeah,
piece
the
of
large
land,
one, yeah.
So,
You have your neighbors built already?
yeah, so this is a municipal standard road, it's not a strata road, so the ownership belongs to Sanch. And it was designed in a way that it would be expanded for the future development opportunity of the lot to the west. Now, those parking stalls, that road dedication down to the water will never be constructed as a road. That's a 22-meter cliff. So those parking stalls will remain in place.
Okay, and my other comment is around the tree loss. So you must have had some discussion with the property owner, right? Because I did see your traffic study had some sort of possible layout of your neighbor next door. So the trees that are on this plan in orange, would they be lost when the road width is done? It looks to me like they would all go.
Yeah, the trees to the west of the road dedication, if that road's built out, they would be lost as
They
part
would
of it.
be lost as well.
But presumably that whoever develops that property will undergo a similar tree replacement strategy to mitigate that loss. But those trees are still, they're fairly poor health as is.
Okay, and I was on the site today, can you talk to me a bit about, there was a comment that, you know, the creek isn't, there's no fish bearing, but you've got some of it in the protected areas. What kind of stormwater, how are you going to manage that? You're going to have rain gardens and things like that?
I think Brad would be more qualified to speak about the stormwater management on the site.
Okay.
No, maybe not, okay.
Maybe not.
There is some subdivision regulations that we have to adhere to. I believe we got the email today from staff regarding some of those steps that need to be done. But the road will be curb and gutter, catchment with oil grit separators. Stormwater, likely given the lot sizes, might be able to be treated on site with some rain gardens of sort. But are you referring to the flow of the water into the creek potentially?
Yeah, I'm just referring to when you add this amount of density in the water and the possible redevelopment of your neighbor. I know staff have told me all that water is going to run through your property. So I'm just wanting to make sure that,
I understand the question now, yeah.
okay.
Yeah, so that when that neighboring property to the west is developed, it would be to the same, I believe, municipal standard, staff can correct me, and so it would have the same curb and gutter catchments. But where that water goes from the neighboring property, I can't comment on this time. It wasn't within the scope of this particular design from the engineer that we contracted.
Okay,
So that's something I'm happy to bring more information to at the public hearing.
okay, thank you. And if I could, I'd like to ask staff a question to the engineer. So the parking spaces on our public road like that, is that something we would actually allow?
Sorry, through the chair to Councillor Raunoff. No, it shows that there's parking there, but as part of the servicing agreement, the parking actually wouldn't be permitted. That area is a turnaround for
Yeah, for
truck
fire, I
access.
would think, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so parking wouldn't, okay, thank you.
If I may, just for clarity and for staff, the Sanch's template was laid down on this, and those vehicles are parked beyond the requirement for any of the Sanch's emergency vehicles up to the fire truck to be able to turn around and not impact those vehicles. So we took that into consideration. We were originally starting with a Barrow and Strata Road, and we just tried to make this work. So.
Anything we want to add to that?
No, just that might be something we'll have to discuss afterwards.
Yeah.
In my office, we call that an offline discussion.
Exactly. Thank you.
So I saw hands from councillors Plant, Sanders, Merrill, and Ward. So we'll go in that order. I think those were questions for the applicant. Oh, you're waiting. It's good to see you too.
It's actually a question for staff, if I may, at this time. Is this an appropriate time, Chair?
It is.
Thank you. So through you to our Mr. Matanowicz tonight, serving as our planning, I'm not sure what role, my apologies. Thank you for being here. We had discussion just on lot averaging. And there was an obvious comment made that there was a disagreement on how it's done, and we've heard from that. Would you please comment on and explain why Saanich does it the way it does, in seeming contradiction to what this gentleman has said?
Thank you, through Mr. Chair. The Barrel Strata regulations certainly do contain lot averaging regulations, and as Mr. Cunningham pointed out, they are for the purpose of clustering to protect certain areas, environmental features, steep slopes and whatnot. That's certainly why those regulations are in place. The issue that we have been having positive dialogue about is our interpretation of the Cordova Bay Local Area Plan, which contains a regulation that says the minimum lot size in this area, the maximum lot size in this area shall be 930 square meters. Now, we apply that equally to Barrel Strata lots and fee simple lots. Fee simple lots wouldn't have the ability to go less than 930 square meters. The zoning bylaw does not allow them to do that. So in a matter of, I wouldn't want to say fairness, but essentially what is fairness of application of the policy, that extends also to Barrel Strata lots. So we've said that no Barrel Strata lot shall be less than 930 square meters, similar to how a fee simple lot could be. What we did extend to this, because there were a lot of discussions about this, is we're saying that under this scenario, we would accept, under this interpretation, that limited common property can be included in that 930 square meter calculation, because limited common property is connected to one lot. Other lots don't have access to that and don't have rights to it. So we essentially said that, okay, you can add that calculation into the calculation of lot area and your averaging, and therefore, under 7 lots, it means that 930 square meters. Under 8, it does not mean that.
It's fascinating insight at 11:30 into the interpretation of the law. So thank you both. I'm going to go to Councillor Sanders, who had a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question of the applicant. Is there, when you were designing your application, did you consider sea level rise?
To the chair, yes and no. Yes, in the terms that we consulted with the geotechnical engineer to consult on the steep slope area, but and how it affects the bank, but in actual sea level rise affecting the subdivision in terms of property loss, it's not a consideration because of the steepness of the slope. The geotechnical engineer has determined it to be safe, set a line of setback, and we're even further beyond that by several meters.
Because the bank is all rock in this particular location. There's no more erosion on that bank.
I was thinking, not erosion so much as the water coming up higher, the climate change and stuff. This is a concern.
It would have
It's 22 meters, yeah, that's the height.
It's a lot. A lot of water. Forget that question.
Yeah. We have bigger problems.
That's a lot, yeah. It's 11, 20, 35. And deconstructing of the existing buildings on the site, will you be deconstructing them?
Yes, through the chair, that's something that we're willing to commit to, is to recycling of the house.
Okay, there was a mention about the water course, and in one of the sustainability report, it just says no construction will endanger the small creek. But how are you planning to protect this water course during its lifetime, forever?
Yeah, so through the chair, on the back side, you can kind of see on the water course in the picture on the right-hand side, there is a 6.6 meter covenanted area that is a non-disturbance area that we're putting as a screening to the neighboring property that also ensures some safety and protection of the creek. It has a 5 meter offset, its direction all the way down to the cliff. But in terms of legislative requirements, it's not connected to any water body that bears fish, so it doesn't have the same regulations that apply to it in terms of protection. But we feel comfortable with the measures that we've taken. It's been vetted by a biologist that we've consulted as well.
Okay, that's fine. I missed it. I can hardly see the display on here, so I missed where your public participation and meeting with the residents, because I read the letter to the Cordova Bay Association about meeting all the residents in the immediate area. You did that? I can't read that.
Yeah, sorry, it is small, my apologies, but we have, no one was in opposition. We met with neighbors on south of Cordova Bay Road. We met with the immediate neighbors as a group and individually as recent as this past Saturday, and got letters of support signed and delivered, voicing their support for 8 lots.
All right, so when you say that was recent, that was some of my concern about your package, that your reports, they were all brought in July 2013, so that's 2 years ago, more than 2 years ago. And even the sustainability reports based on a 10-lot subdivision. The Talbot report, it's also 10 lots, and it was written in 2012. The Boulevard report's 2014, so it's not as bad. So I was just have you updated those at all? Because I felt this year's sustainability report that it was rather neat on the, well, like we've been talking about the creek and the stormwater management particularly.
Yeah.
We changed a lot in the last number of years, so I'm just thinking that, perhaps there needs to be more detail.
So it was through the chair, our most recent biologist report, I believe, was January 15th of 2014, and that was addressing the updated plan. We started at 10, reduced it to 9 for the neighbors, and then we were, I don't want to say forced, but we had to reduce it down to 8 due to the road dedication, a 20-meter right-of-way that goes to the ocean. And so we lost another waterfront lot, which I know we're before you for discretionary approval, but there are economics that play into this from a financial standpoint. And losing the 9th lot, it hurt the project, and so we've taken every step we can to ensure a quality project with the neighbors. We have 3 biology reports, a geotechnical report, traffic study, but it's really important that we achieve a financially viable product, and the 8th lot is key to that. And so we can have our disagreements with staff on the lot averaging.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a really long answer to your question, and somewhat irrelevant to your question, and I apologize.
All right, thank you. Mr. Chair, can I just ask one question of our environmental planner?
Sure.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, Adrian, do you have any information on this water course? Has there been any discussion of it, or is it not fish bearing? It's, we know we're going anywhere.
Through the chair, the water course was checked by Swell Environmental, a QEP, Qualified Environmental Professional, and it showed that the original source of water to the water course was no longer there, and so it was more localized, and that there was no fishery resource associated with the water course.
Good, thank you.
Just in reply, one more thoughtful reply to your question, Councillor Sanders, were any questions to the applicant? There's no motion on the floor, which would normally be the point at which we would say no further questions. Thank you. I saw a hand from Councillor Worthman and Councillor Henry.
Thanks very much. I think for the applicant or staff or both, the road, future road widening, it stops halfway down, right down to lot 7. And then for some reason where you got those 3 parked cars, you put the whole road widening on one side. And doing that, if it's going to widen at a future time or to wipe out that one large street, I guess the question I'd ask, what was the reason for putting it all on one side? And what's the purpose of the road going down there? For parking?
The dedication, in fact, the whole length, it could have been up to 20 meters wide. Through the discussion with our subdivision approving officer, we realized that, okay, that property may develop on to the, this is to the west. So what we said was, on that part of the property, that's where the road would most likely be. However, we still do want to achieve access to the water on this property, should that property never develop. So for public access purposes, that's why it's wider at the waterfront, so you can have some public accessibility to that area for viewing of the water.
Realistically, do we see that road being developed and stairs and whatever going down to the beach? Or is it just, could be, maybe, might be?
There are a lot of water access, through the chair, there are a lot of water accesses that have benches at the end throughout the Saanich, so certainly there's no reason why that couldn't be an accessible area.
Is this a question for the applicant? Okay, I think you're good. Thank you very much. Councilor Dermott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to move the staff recommendation.
Is there a seconder? Okay, just to clarify the recommendation from staff.
The recommendation from staff is that the council support option 1 and postpone further consideration of the application to allow the applicant to reconsider the proposal, and that was basically on the lot averaging issue.
Okay, is there a seconder for that motion? Councilor Sanders? Okay, Councilor Dermott on the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I just want to speak to a few things in the report, and I really appreciate the report from staff. It's very complete, it's very informative, but there are a couple of things that I see consistently in reports that I just want to mention. One is the section on climate change. I find consistently that what we are getting is all the reasons why a particular application fits with climate change. And to some degree they do, and to some degree they don't. I would really hope to see that change. This is my personal view, of course, where we started to get a report that said, here are the positive aspects of this in responding to climate change, and here are the negatives. You know, is it close to services? Can people walk easily? Is it auto-centric in development, or is it otherwise, and so forth? And get yes, there are these strengths, and yes, there is these minuses, but I don't see that currently, and I would hope to see that in the future. The other thing that and this is not an issue with staff or anything at all, it's something long-term in the municipality, but we often get in a report, and from an applicant very often, a traffic study that says the additional many cars from this project will not have